Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss seclusion and restraint of children. There are allegations of the abusive use of seclusion and restraint in public and private schools. My testimony today addresses these allegations. My testimony has two parts. First, I will provide you with a brief background, and second, I will discuss the results of our investigation. First, there are no federal laws restricting the use of seclusion and restraint in public and private schools. At the state level, laws and regulations vary widely. For example, 19 states have no laws or regulations that restrict the use of seclusion and restraint. At the other end of the spectrum, 8 states specifically prohibit the use of restraint that restricts breathing. Although no national data is available, for California and Texas alone, it was reported that there were 33,000 instances of seclusion, restraint, or other interventions during the 2008 school year. Moving on to the results of our investigation, we identified hundreds of allegations of the abusive use of seclusion and restraint in public and private schools. At least 20 of these cases resulted in death. Most of the allegations related to children with disabilities. Some of the more troubling allegations that we identified include a 3-year-old boy being strapped to a chair and secluded in a timeout room, a 5-year-old boy having his elbow fractured from a basket hold restraint, a teenage boy repeatedly being locked in a 4x6 timeout room and then being forced to stay there after defecating, a 13-year-old boy hanging himself in a seclusion room with a cord that teachers provided to him to hold up his pants, and a 17-year-old girl choking to death in her own vomit after being held in a face-down restraint. We took an in-depth look at 10 of these cases involving 18 children between the ages of 4 and 15. The purpose of our work was to validate the facts and circumstances for each of these cases. This included interviewing numerous people, along with reviewing police reports, autopsies, court records, and other evidence. The facts and circumstances we found for these cases were similar to those for the hundreds of allegations. Let me briefly describe 3 of these cases. First, the monitors show a picture of Christina Kilmer at the age of 8. Christina was born with cerebral palsy and later diagnosed with autism. At the age of 4, her mother noticed that she was coming home from her preschool classes in West Virginia with bruises on her arms, chest, and legs. It turns out that she was being restrained in something that looked like an electric chair. This chair had a high back and leather straps across the arms, chest, and legs. The teacher had restrained her in this chair because she was being uncooperative. Christina wet her pants while being restrained in this chair. According to her mother, Christina would act in an uncooperative way when she needed to use the restroom. Second, the monitors show a picture of Jonathan Carey at the age of 13 with his father. Jonathan was intellectually disabled and autistic. At the age of 11, a private school in New York secluded him in his room for extended periods of time. He was also denied 40% of his regular meals for behavioral problems. His father removed him from this school after finding him lying naked in his own urine. Although hard to believe, things got worse for Jonathan when he was transferred to a state school for children with disabilities. While on a field trip, Jonathan became disruptive in the school van and was restrained by an aide. Jonathan died after this aide sat on top of him until he stopped breathing. Third, the monitors show a picture of Christopher Smith at the age of 8. Christopher was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. When he was 9 years old, he was secluded 75 times in the timeout room you see shown on both monitors. Although this room was unlocked, a staff person would hold the door shut so that Christopher could not leave. You might wonder what this boy did to be secluded in this room 75 different times. I have in my hand copies of the 75 logs that document these incidents. The monitors show excerpts from these logs. As you can see, Christopher was being punished for making noises, waving his hands, chewing on his shirt, and fidgeting. Key themes from our 10 cases include, first, as I mentioned, most of these children had disabilities. Second, prone or other restraints that restrict breathing can be deadly. Third, staff were not properly trained. And fourth, those found responsible for the abusive use of seclusion and restraint continue to be licensed and work with children. For example, one teacher was found to have physically abused a boy by restraining him until he died. This teacher was placed in the Texas State Registry of individuals that have abused and neglected children. Today, she teaches at a public high school in Northern Virginia, just a short drive from where we sit. In conclusion, there is no way to determine how widespread the abusive use of seclusion and restraint is in our nation. However, many of the 18 children from our case studies, including 4 preschoolers, were clearly abused and tortured. This disturbing evidence makes this issue worthy of the attention of this committee and parents across the nation. Mr. Chairman, this ends my statement, and I look forward to your questions.